A lot of WWE fans right now are saying 2025 and 2026 is the worst era WWE has ever had. I see it everywhere. On Twitter, in comment sections, in every fan space where people still talk about the product week to week. And I understand why someone watching today might feel that way.
Rest in peace.
But I have to disagree. I've been watching wrestling for a long time. Long enough to have sat through The Miz versus John Cena headlining WrestleMania, genuinely headlining, main event, closing the show, and told myself it was fine, it was temporary. Better was coming. I watched John Cena headline WrestleMania after WrestleMania through the 2010 to 2013 stretch, while the rest of the card existed mostly to fill time, while the mid-card ran in place, while the whole era produced one moment worth talking about: CM Punk, Las Vegas, June 2011. A microphone and a worked shoot that reminded everyone this product still had a pulse.
The fact that Dwayne is in the main event of WrestleMania next year and I'm not makes me sick.
Before that pipe bomb, there were long months of television where being a fan felt like loyalty the company had stopped earning. Those years were genuinely hard to watch. I know those years. I lived through them. And 2018 and 2019 was worse. I have a specific memory of sitting in front of a Raw during that run, picking up my phone in the middle of a segment, and realizing 20 minutes later I hadn't looked at the screen once. I had no idea what was happening on the show. And when I looked up, caught the broadcast mid-promo, I closed the laptop anyway. That was a new feeling. 20 years of watching this product, and that had never happened before. And I know I wasn't alone. I watched my friends disappear from group chats. I watched the forums change tone. Less anger, more silence. I watched people who had dedicated a decade of their lives to this product, just quietly, without ceremony, stop watching. The product simply stopped mattering. By the end of 2019, 8 of the 10 lowest rated episodes of Raw in history had happened during this stretch. Not a rough patch, not a bad month. 8 of the 10 worst performing episodes the show had ever produced, across 26 years of television, happened inside this window. Today I want to walk through exactly what happened, why those 2 years were so damaging, what was happening behind the scenes, what the decisions were that broke the product, and what the consequences turned out to be. Because the consequences of WWE's 2018 and 2019 are still playing out today. That era changed the wrestling industry permanently. To understand why 2018 and 2019 were so catastrophically bad, you have to understand the financial situation WWE found itself in going into those years. Because the money was already in the bank, and nobody needed the show to be good to keep it there, when your audience can go somewhere else and find something better, you have to be better. That's what drove the Monday Night Wars in the late 90s. WWE and WCW were spending every week trying to outdo each other, and the audience was the beneficiary. By 2018, WWE had been operating without a serious competitor for 17 years. WCW closed in 2001. ECW closed in 2001. TNA had been attempting to mount a challenge for a decade without ever managing it in any meaningful way. WWE was, for all practical purposes, the only game in mainstream North American wrestling. And then, right at the moment when the creative product was already showing cracks, they signed 2 enormous television deals: NBC Universal for Raw, Fox Sports for SmackDown. The combined value was in the billions of dollars. Guaranteed money, regardless of ratings, regardless of attendance, regardless of whether the product was good or a walking disaster. Then came the Saudi Arabia partnership, a 10-year deal to produce premium live events in the kingdom, each reportedly generating tens of millions of dollars per event. Same logic: show up, do the event, collect the check. What those contracts did, collectively, was remove everything that might have forced improvement. The usual pressure, ratings fall, contracts renegotiate, budgets tighten, urgency kicks in, was gone. Eliminated. WWE had been paid in advance for years of television regardless of quality. When revenue is guaranteed whatever you put on screen, the creative department has no financial incentive to put anything good on screen. I watched the writing staff operate under this logic week after week. Scripts assembled and reassembled until the last possible moment. Promos handed to performers hours before they were meant to deliver them. Vince McMahon changing his mind at will, sometimes between dress rehearsal and the live show, sometimes during the live show. And now, with no competitive pressure and no ratings consequence, The dysfunction that had always existed inside that creative process had nothing to check it. The show became 3 hours of television that somehow felt both overcrowded and empty at the same time. Endless segments, endless rematches, nothing advancing, nothing sticking. What made this especially painful for fans was that 2016 had actually given them real hope. That year, WWE reintroduced the brand split, Raw and SmackDown as distinct shows with separate rosters and storylines. For a brief, exciting period, it worked. SmackDown in 2016 and 2017 was legitimately good television. The roster was being used intelligently. Mid-card talent was getting meaningful stories. The product had variety and momentum. And then it came apart. By the time WrestleMania 34 rolled around in April of 2018, what had felt like a genuine creative reinvention had curdled into something that barely resembled professional wrestling storytelling. For 2 seconds, it genuinely looked like the people in charge had figured something out, found the right levers, turned them the right way. Then 2 years of watching every promising development get reversed, every organic moment get killed. The optimism made the eventual fallout so much worse. If they'd never given you reason to believe it was turning around, the disappointment would have been manageable.
Not ever I trained, but the hardest I've been able to train in probably 10 years. And I was ready. I trained for like a 45-minute.
That match was so short, though.
Well, yeah. And I didn't know it was going to be short till I got there that day.
That WrestleMania was the moment the problems became impossible to ignore. WrestleMania 34. Mercedes-Benz Superdome, New Orleans. 75,000 people. The biggest stage in wrestling. Brock Lesnar is defending the Universal Championship against Roman Reigns in the main event.
For the Universal Championship!
The match itself told you everything you needed to know about where things stood. Lesnar, at this point, had been Universal Champion for over a year, while appearing on Raw roughly 5 times. 5. He held the company's primary title and was almost never on the show. The rest of the roster had to exist in this strange liminal space, competing for opportunities to face a man who wasn't there.
Where's Brock at? I was told that he's running a little bit late.
The entire year of 2017 and the early months of 2018 had been spent building Reigns toward the moment he would finally dethrone the absent champion.
And the Universal Champion is not here today.
The crowd in New Orleans knew what was coming. They'd made their peace with it. They were prepared to go along. And then Lesnar retained. 75,000 people went quiet in a way that wasn't disappointment. It was resignation. They'd sat through the build. They'd waited for the payoff. And the company had just told them there wasn't one. The title situation dragged on for months, into Backlash, where Reigns fought Samoa Joe in a main event received so poorly that large sections of the live audience got up and left before the match ended. Walked out in the middle of a pay-per-view main event. They weren't hijacking the show because they were passionate. They were checking out completely. The disengagement wasn't limited to one bad night either. At Extreme Rules 2018, fans became so checked out during Seth Rollins and Dolph Ziggler's Iron Man match that they started counting down every minute like the Royal Rumble buzzer.
We're main eventing the show. 3 minutes in, the crowd just starts doing the clock. And we're inside. I just put like a hold on. I'm like, man, what is happening? Like, what? And they're not even doing the clock right, so it's kind of screwing me up.
The clock was on screen, so they used it. WWE pulled the timer graphic to make them stop.
They take it off the screen, so the crowd just starts going 10, 9.
The crowd kept counting anyway.
7, 6, 5.
Elsewhere on the WrestleMania card, Braun Strowman, the most organically over babyface on the roster, a 7-foot monster the crowd had adopted as their own, was booked to win the Raw Tag Team Championships alongside a 10-year-old child selected at random from the audience.
This kid, Nicholas!
The bit was supposed to be a fun WrestleMania moment. Instead, it told the audience that the tag team titles were so worthless that putting them on a 10-year-old was acceptable, and that Strowman's enormous momentum was worth nothing more than a punchline. The women's division told a parallel story. WWE had been heavily marketing its women's evolution, the idea that the female roster was being taken seriously as a competitive product. Asuka had arrived on the main roster with an undefeated streak built over years in NXT. She won the first Women's Royal Rumble, challenged Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34, and lost via submission. The streak ended. That part was fine. Streaks end. The problem was what came next. Asuka was immediately absorbed into forgettable mid-card programming, her aura of invincibility spent in weeks and discarded. WWE teased a serious Sasha Banks and Bayley feud for months before reducing it to comedy therapy segments.
Every chance she gets, she continues to stab me in the back.
And abandoning it entirely. Two of the best performers in the company, gone. Then there was Rusev. Rusev, alongside Aiden English, had developed one of the most beloved characters on the roster through completely organic crowd growth.
Rusev Day!
The Rusev Day gimmick grew from the audience up, not from any creative decision WWE made. The chants were everywhere. He was the top merchandise mover on the roster during stretches of this run.
Loved it. Loved chanting Rusev Day and celebrating Rusev Day. And I got that sweet treatment that, oh, I have a beach towel? Oh, I have sunglasses now? It says Rusev Day?
The company's response was to refuse to put him in the main event. Management gave the character an invisible ceiling that crowd response alone couldn't lift him past. The Rusev Day phenomenon was eventually rewarded with a deeply uncomfortable storyline involving his real-life wife Lana and a fake affair with Bobby Lashley.
I can honestly say it was 100% Lana that was able to, one, make me feel comfortable doing it, and then two, just trying to do things to really further that whole feud.
The character who had spent a year generating crowd joy became the victim of a humiliation angle. The Revival, who would become FTR and be recognized as one of the best tag teams in the world, were during this period subjected to repeated segments involving backshaving and other forms of slapstick humiliation. No wrestling matches. And then there was Saudi Arabia. Crown Jewel 2018 was held in Riyadh on November 2nd. 6 weeks earlier, journalist Jamal Khashoggi was unalived inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The unaliving was state-sanctioned. The international response was swift. Multiple major corporations pulled out of Saudi-sponsored events.
These business titans that have these huge companies lose their moral compass.
John Cena refused to go. Daniel Bryan refused to go and explained publicly why.
John Cena and Daniel Bryan will not take part in the WWE's upcoming Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia.
The event generated press coverage WWE had never wanted, connecting the company directly to the political fallout of a state-sanctioned killing. WWE went anyway. The Saudi government wanted nostalgia acts, so WWE populated the cards with aging legends doing matches they had no business doing. Crown Jewel 2018 featured a World Cup tournament to crown the best in the world, won by Shane McMahon. The CEO's son, a non-wrestler who wasn't in the tournament, after he replaced an injured Miz and pinned Dolph Ziggler in the final. Shane McMahon presenting a trophy to himself for winning his own father's company's tournament, while the full-time roster stood around having been told their professional credibility was worth less than whatever was happening on that stage.
Until tonight, the Big H event in its finest form.
The main event was D-Generation X against the Brothers of Destruction. 4 men with a combined age over 200 years. Triple H tore his pectoral muscle early and had to continue anyway. The sequences were botched throughout, and Shawn Michaels, who had retired at WrestleMania 26 in a moment of genuine beauty, who had promised he was done, was in this match in Saudi Arabia for a payday, having one of the worst matches of his career.
Michaels up to the top rope! Michaels moonsaults!
Michaels' retirement had been perfect. Crown Jewel 2018 now existed beside it in the record, and anyone who wanted to look could see both things sitting there together. The following year, Super Showdown in Jeddah brought Goldberg versus Undertaker. Goldberg concussed himself on the ring post early in the bout and spent the rest of the match severely impaired.
To the Undertaker! No way! Oh,
he dropped Undertaker on his neck. Wrestling journalists spent the following days writing about a bout that had been physically dangerous. 2 men in their 50s, one of them severely concussed, doing things with their bodies that could have resulted in permanent injury. Ethical compromise, creative failure, real physical danger, packaged and sold as entertainment.
Knocked myself out before walking to the freaking ring. I should have picked up on the fact that he had his bell rung. I'd forgotten my preparation. It had been so long. I should have been sharp enough to adapt at that point and not try to get to where I was getting.
In May 2019, Jon Moxley sat down with Chris Jericho on the Talk is Jericho podcast and talked for 2.5 hours. The interview is one of the most important documents in modern wrestling history. The value is the accumulated weight of detail from someone who had actually been inside the room, the daily reality of trying to make good television under the conditions WWE imposed on its performers. The picture he painted was of a company where everything passed through one filter, Vince McMahon.
So it's a bunch of crap about, the people are smelly and insulting the audience. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't get anything over. I'm confused.
Every script, every promo, every segment passed through one man. McMahon's word was final. What he wanted in a script went in the script, regardless of whether the performer delivering it thought it made sense, regardless of whether it was consistent with the character's established motivations, regardless of whether anyone watching at home would find it believable. Moxley gave examples. He received a script containing dialogue so clearly nonsensical, dialogue he characterized as something only an idiot would say, that he went to a writer and asked for it to be reworked.
Can we not write one good promo? Does everything have to be stupid? Does everything have to make me look like an idiot?
The script came back with McMahon's handwriting on it, the original lines, McMahon's note saying they had to stay. When Moxley went directly to McMahon's office to discuss it, McMahon told him the idiotic dialogue was exactly what made his character connect with the audience. He described being forbidden from rewriting his promos. During the Seth Rollins feud in late 2018,
I was trying to talk to your people!
A feud that on paper should have been emotionally compelling, two former brothers at war, Moxley received scripts he thought were incoherent, tried to work around them, and was explicitly told by McMahon that he was to read them verbatim. The feud that was supposed to be personal and visceral was built from material the man performing it believed made no sense. But the worst of it? The part of the interview that told you everything you needed to know about how this era was being run was the story of the Dean Ambrose heel turn. October 22nd, 2018, Monday Night Raw. Roman Reigns comes to the ring and tells the crowd his leukemia has returned.
And I've been living with leukemia for 11 years, and unfortunately it's back.
He has to relinquish the Universal Championship. He doesn't know when he'll be back. He thanks the fans, walks up the ramp, and through the curtain. Later that same night, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose win the Raw Tag Team Championships. In the moment of celebration, Ambrose turns and hits Rollins with a super kick.
Not on this night!
The timing was perfect. On the night Roman Reigns, the man who had held the Shield together as a real family, had to announce that he was sick, his brother Dean committed the most visceral betrayal the story could have produced. The heel turn hit with the weight of the real-world tragedy. The crowd was emotionally raw. Ambrose, in that moment, was the hottest villain in professional wrestling. And then the creative team spent the next 3 months systematically destroying everything that made it work. McMahon's vision for the newly villainous Ambrose was that he would be a germaphobe, disgusted by the filth of the audience.
Now I apologize for the drastic measures I have taken tonight.
This was communicated via Ambrose wearing a gas mask to the ring, literally a gas mask, over his face, to protect himself from crowd germs. Then, in a segment Moxley describes with barely contained humiliation, Ambrose visited an on-screen doctor's office and received multiple inoculations in his backside.
There is no medicine for you.
To protect himself from catching diseases from the fans of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Moxley hated it. He told McMahon he hated it. McMahon told him it wasn't comedy, it would generate heat. Trust the process. Moxley did the segment. He said later that participating in it caused damage to his credibility he doesn't think he ever fully recovered from.
I was always able to recover. I remember sitting there thinking that might be the one I just can't recover from.
And then it got worse.
This promo also had a line regarding my actual friend who's going through actual leukemia that Vince wanted me to say, that he tried to talk me into saying. This is where I absolutely drew the line. I was like, absolutely not. No, and he's actually tried to talk me into it a little bit, but I was like, absolutely not.
Moxley delivered one scripted line and felt disgusted with himself immediately after saying it on live television. He revealed in the interview that there was a second, more offensive scripted reference to Roman's cancer, one he flatly refused to say. He said that if he had delivered that line as McMahon demanded, WWE would have faced a major crisis and almost certainly lost corporate sponsorships. The feud ended at TLC in December 2018. Ambrose and Rollins, a blood feud, a betrayal story, two former brothers, had a slow, technical wrestling match. The live audience rejected it. The crowd had been told for 2 months that these men hated each other, and then watched them perform a match with all the heat of a random SmackDown mid-card bout. Moxley requested his release shortly after. He had a year left on his contract. He sat out, he waited. When the contract expired in April 2019, he was done. What the Moxley interview made clear, what matters beyond the individual stories, was that the Ambrose situation was the standard, the template. The entire roster was living inside the same creative environment. Scripts handed to performers that didn't match their characters, that contradicted established story logic, that asked them to say and do things any reasonable viewer would find confusing or insulting. And those scripts could not be changed, because the one man at the top believed he knew better than the people performing the material what the material should say. The apathy viewers experienced watching this television, the flatness, the sense that nobody on screen quite believed what was happening, was the visible result of performers who had been told, repeatedly, that their instincts were wrong and Vince McMahon's were right. After enough of that, the performance starts to show it. 2018 was bad decisions. 2019 was structural disintegration. The decisions stopped connecting to each other entirely. There are individual bad years in wrestling. Booking goes poor, feuds don't land, matches underdeliver. Those years happen. What made 2019 different was that the people running the show had stopped thinking about what each decision meant for the ones that would follow, and were simply producing content week to week with no coherent thread running through any of it. Start with the wild card rule.
What if we had ourselves a wild card rule?
The brand split, reintroduced in 2016, had worked because it gave the illusion of two distinct worlds. Raw was Raw, SmackDown was SmackDown. A crossover appearance felt like an event. The structure also meant a wider range of talent got featured. You couldn't just default to the same 5 people every week when they were split across 2 shows. In May 2019, with Raw's ratings sliding toward historic lows, McMahon introduced the wildcard rule. Nominally, up to 4 performers could appear on the opposing brand's show each week. In practice, the number was ignored immediately. Brand exclusivity was destroyed, and the same half-dozen top stars appeared on both shows every single week. Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Shane McMahon. Everywhere, all the time, on both shows. The mid-card talent who had been given opportunities because the brand split created space for them were now sidelined for weekly crossovers. The specialness of an inter-brand appearance, the thing the structure had been designed to generate, was gone. Seth Rollins publicly said the rule muddied things and eliminated the special feeling that had made the shows feel like separate products. He was being generous. To give you a sense of what a normal week of Raw looked like in this period, one episode featured Dean Ambrose getting injections in his backside, Drake Maverick urinating on Bobby Roode's robe,
There it is. There it is.
a Lucha House Party rules match, and Baron Corbin opening the show with another 20-minute authority promo.
Every night I come out here and I do my absolute best. It's not
3 hours every Monday. Elsewhere in the mid-card, the roster produced programming that would have been embarrassing in any era. Mike Kanellis appeared on television in a segment where his real-life wife Maria emasculated him for weeks without discernible narrative purpose.
I'll ask Becky to impregnate me.
EC3, a performer who had been one of the top names in TNA for years and arrived in WWE with real momentum, was buried on secondary shows almost immediately and released within a year. The explanation reportedly given internally was that because Dean Ambrose was receiving babyface reactions during his heel run, and EC3 happened to be nearby during one of those moments, the crowd's response to Ambrose was somehow EC3's fault, and he was punished accordingly.
Where are EC1 and 2?
Seth Rollins engaged in a public Twitter argument with Will Ospreay that alienated a significant portion of the fan base most enthusiastic about his championship run.
What's the match that you want to have? I think it's got to be Seth after the little Twitter thing.
On television, his main feud was with Baron Corbin, repeatedly incorporating Corbin attacking the reality of Rollins' relationship with Becky Lynch.
Smart enough to realize that I got the best backup on the planet.
Resulting in mixed tag matches the audience didn't want and the performers reportedly didn't enjoy. Roman Reigns, in a separate extended program with that same Baron Corbin, was subjected to a segment where the two men poured dog food on each other. Dog food. On the flagship show of the world's largest wrestling company. The direction chosen for the man positioned as the top star for half a decade.
You want to be the big dog? You want to eat big dog?
And Baron Corbin was on television for what felt like every available minute. The constable angle.
I hereby appoint Baron Corbin as the new constable.
The acting general manager run.
You're the acting general manager of Monday Night Raw.
Corbin occupied enormous blocks of Raw week after week, and the audience's response was the kind of quiet that is worse than heat, silence. The silence of a crowd that had learned that responding wasn't worth the energy. The one genuinely great story 2019 produced was KofiMania. And the way that story ended tells you more about WWE's values during this period than any of the bad booking does. Kofi Kingston had been in WWE for over a decade. A dependable, popular mid-card performer the crowds liked and management had decided had a ceiling. In early 2019, the crowd decided otherwise. The organic momentum behind Kingston's push toward the WWE Championship, the chants, the New Day rallying around him, the story of a man who had given everything to a company that had never fully trusted him, finally getting his shot.
What I need to do so that I can do it!
Became one of the most emotionally resonant storylines the company had told in years. And the reason it worked was precisely because it grew from the audience up. Management didn't plan this. The crowd built it, and management had the rare good sense to let it run. Kingston's story resonated because it was true to something. The feeling that loyalty and consistency and showing up every single night should eventually be rewarded. That the people in the building, not the people in the boardroom, should get to decide who matters. Kingston won the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 35. He had a good reign. He defended the title. He showed up every week. He was everything a full-time champion was supposed to be.
Kingston defends against Brock Lesnar, distinct physical advantage.
October 4th, 2019. SmackDown on Fox. The first episode on the new network. The show WWE had sold to Fox for hundreds of millions of dollars in front of a massive premiere audience.
And here comes the beast!
Brock Lesnar appears. Challenges Kingston for the title. The match begins.
Break point available now, and Brock Lesnar quickly with Kofi Kingston, and an F5 by Lesnar. Here's the cover.
8 seconds. The man who had waited a decade for his opportunity, who had carried the brand, who the crowd had chosen, gone in 8 seconds on the biggest possible stage, so the part-time attraction could hold the title again.
Sudden impact by the big...
Kingston never received a rematch. He went back to the mid-card the following week, smiling, tossing pancakes with his tag team partners, acting as though none of it had happened. No rage, no devastation, no story. The audience got the message. The audience always gets the message, even when the company doesn't say it out loud. The message was, the things you invest in don't matter. Your investment in a performer's journey can be erased in 8 seconds when we decide we need that title somewhere else. The crowd-driven push, the decade of loyalty, the WrestleMania moment, all of it was temporary. None of it was going to be protected. Then came Hell in a Cell. October 6th, 2019. 2 days after the SmackDown premiere, Seth Rollins defending the Universal Championship against The Fiend, Bray Wyatt's supernatural alter ego, inside the Hell in a Cell structure. The Fiend was the hottest character in the company. The mask, the presentation, unsettling in a way WWE characters rarely managed to be. The aura had been carefully maintained because the character had been carefully protected. He didn't lose. He was a monster, and the audience believed in the monster. That belief had been earned slowly, over months of vignettes and appearances and squash matches where the character was presented as something outside the normal rules of the product. The Fiend operated in his own logic. Other performers could recover from a loss, absorb a defeat, come back the following week. The Fiend's entire value proposition was that he couldn't. He was exempt from the normal consequences of professional wrestling storytelling. The audience had accepted that premise and invested in it. That investment was the thing the Hell in a Cell finish would spend. Rollins hits 12 curb stomps, a pedigree, steel chairs and ladders. He places a ladder and a chair across Wyatt's body and hits them with a sledgehammer. Wyatt keeps getting up. The crowd is building towards something. Whatever comes next should be the payoff. The referee stops the match. No pinfall, no submission. The referee stops the match, in a no disqualification environment, inside a steel cage, because the violence had become, according to the referee, too much. The live audience in Sacramento erupts. Bullshit. Refund. And then, in a moment that tells you exactly where the industry was heading, the crowd of a WWE pay-per-view, in the main event, chanting the name of the competitor that had launched 3 months earlier. The booking logic behind the finish was transparent. Management couldn't have Rollins lose the title. They had plans for the title. Management couldn't have The Fiend take a pinfall. They had built him as indestructible, and a loss would damage the character. So they produced a non-finish in a match that, by its own architecture, cannot logically produce one. The WWE digital team later released a referee explanation, claiming he stopped the bout to protect The Fiend's well-being as a competitor. The audience gave that explanation the response it deserved. 1 booking decision, 3 characters damaged. A crowd chanting for the competition. That was Hell in a Cell 2019. December 17th, 2018, Monday Night Raw. The McMahon family walks to the ring. All of them. Vince, Stephanie, Shane, Triple H, standing in the ring together in a moment that broke the fourth wall in a way the company almost never does. Vince McMahon acknowledged, on live television, that the product had not been up to snuff. He acknowledged management had been absentee. He promised a fresh start.
We're gonna give you what you want.
Wrestling media covered it extensively. Viewers who had been drifting away tuned in out of curiosity. For about 2 weeks, there was a genuine sense that things might actually change. They didn't. And it's worth saying, fans had heard versions of this promise before. Reset, change, fresh start, listen to the audience. This wasn't the first time the family had stood in the ring and offered a new beginning. Each time, the product had slid back into the same habits within weeks. The December 2018 apology confirmed, without intending to, that the people running the company understood there was a problem. The year that followed confirmed that understanding a problem and being willing to fix it are different things. 2019 produced everything I described in the last section. The wildcard rule, the 8-second Kingston loss, Baron Corbin and dog food, Hell in a Cell. Monday Night Raw averaged a 1.19 Nielsen rating in 2019, down from 1.37 the year before, down from 1.42 the year before that. The cable ecosystem was declining generally, but wrestling observers noted repeatedly that WWE's decline was substantially outpacing the industry average. The shows were losing viewers to other choices. McMahon stood in the ring and said sorry for what the show had become. Then the same man went back to running the show the same way he always had. While all of this was happening inside WWE, something was being built outside it. January 2019. Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks announced the formation of All Elite Wrestling, backed by Tony Khan. The announcement named exactly what AEW intended to be: a sports-centric presentation, long-term booking, creative freedom for performers. Everything WWE had stopped providing during the previous 2 years. AEW introduced themselves by saying they'd do everything WWE had stopped doing. That's not a coincidence. That's a company reading the room WWE had abandoned.
Would you treat me better if I was an ex-WWE guy?
AEW's inaugural pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, aired May 25, 2019. The crowd in Las Vegas was loud and alive in a way wrestling audiences hadn't been in years. And then, at the end of the show, a man walked through the curtain. Jon Moxley, Dean Ambrose, already transformed, looser, harder, more himself than he'd been on television in years. He walked to the ring and stared down Chris Jericho, and the crowd lost its mind. I remember watching it live and trying to process what I was looking at. This was a man I had watched be handed gas masks and inoculation scripts and cancer reference dialogue for 18 months. This was the man who had sat in Vince McMahon's office and been told that the idiotic dialogue was exactly what made his character connect. And here he was, in a different building, on a different show, with different music, carrying himself like someone who had remembered who he was. The crowd was cheering the exit. The fact that he had gotten out and was standing there, proving it was possible to get out. That appearance sent a message through the industry. WWE's performers were watching. The top-tier talent that had spent years inside the machine Moxley had described on the podcast, who had lived through the same creative suffocation, the same script reading, the same character assassination, watched a man they knew show up in a different company and immediately look more like himself.
To knock the pillars of this industry on them!
The alternative existed. The alternative was viable. By October 2019, AEW had a television deal. Dynamite on TNT, Wednesday nights. WWE moved NXT from the WWE Network to USA Network in the same Wednesday time slot. The Wednesday Night Wars began. In the ratings, head-to-head, AEW consistently led NXT in overall viewership and in the 18 to 49 demographic advertisers prioritize. NXT was a developmental brand operating with different goals, and WWE's internal definition of success included roster development and long-term brand building beyond weekly numbers. But by the measure that drives television contracts, the audience choosing between them week to week, AEW led. WWE moved NXT to Tuesday nights in April 2021. The Monday Night Wars had ended, with WWE absorbing WCW and establishing 2 decades of unchallenged dominance.
Right? I own WCW.
The Wednesday Night Wars ended with WWE in retreat. 2 different outcomes. Shows have bad seasons, storytelling slumps happen, they end. 2018 and 2019 would have been recoverable too. except for what those years built in the process. The damage those years did to the audience's relationship with WWE was the raw material from which a competitor was constructed. AEW was WWE's failure, given a corporate structure and a television deal and a roster of performers who finally had somewhere to go. Every person chanting for Moxley at Double or Nothing had been trained, over 2 years of WWE television, to need exactly what he was offering. The market AEW walked into had been built by WWE's own audience erosion. 2 years of systematic alienation, filled with people who wanted better and now had somewhere to be. Those 2 years changed professional wrestling permanently. They ended a 20-year era of unchallenged dominance. They created the competitive landscape the sport operates in today. They forced WWE, eventually, to actually reckon with its own creative process, to make the changes the December 2018 apology promised and failed to deliver. I turned off Raw after 22 minutes on a Monday night in 2019. My hand found the remote and the screen went dark, and I sat there in the quiet and felt nothing. A few months later, I was up at midnight watching Moxley walk through a curtain in Las Vegas, and I was loud about it. That's what WWE's worst era actually cost them. The ratings points, the merchandise revenue, the talent who walked, all of that mattered, but what actually hurt was the fans who grew up on this product, who assumed they'd watch it forever, who one Monday night just stopped. That's the legacy of WWE in 2018 and 2019. The bad matches, the gas mask, the dog food. The legacy is what it started, and we're still living in it. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and subscribe. And if you want to see the complete story of one of the only truly great moments from this era, check out my video on KofiMania right here.